Hello and welcome to The World This Week on France 24. I'm Laura Baines, and tonight my guests and I will be taking a look back at the most important stories of the past 7 days, including as technocrats rise to power across Europe, elected leaders fail to agree on how to resolve the debt crisis. Plus, is the Occupy protest over? Or could this just be the beginning as the anti-corporate greed movement moves into its third month? We'll also be taking a look at Syria, where protesting is to take one's life into one's own hands. The violence there continues this Friday despite an ultimatum issued by the Arab League. All of that coming up in The World This Week. First, though, let's get the latest international headlines with Nadia Sharbit in the newsroom. Over to you, Nadia.
Thank you, Laura. These are the headlines this hour. Tough talk on Syria. French authorities accuse President Bashar al-Assad of staying deaf to international pressure and say the situation is becoming ever more dramatic as the massacres continue. Varying political stripes and very different banners, but one common message. Egyptians gather in Tahrir Square to call on the military to transfer power to a civilian government as soon as possible. And a boycott and a cancelled invitation. Iran lashes out at the UN's atomic agency after its board of governors voices mounting suspicions that the Islamic Republic may be seeking to develop atomic bombs. A 14-year-old boy is among the latest victims of the Syrian regime's lethal crackdown on dissent. Activists say the teen was among those shot dead in the southern city of Deraa this Friday. A total of 11 casualties have been reported so far countrywide. Well, the latest bloodletting comes on the eve of a deadline set by the Arab League that's threatening sanctions on Syria if the violence continues. Meanwhile, the French are on all diplomatic fronts. While Prime Minister François Picard was in Russia trying to get the Kremlin on side, his Foreign Affairs Minister was in Turkey talking up the idea of a UN resolution. We're joined now by phone by Middle East specialist Ziad Majed. Thank you for being with us here on France 24. We're seeing those diplomatic efforts on the outside, and on the inside, we've seen spectacular actions by army deserters who've joined the uprising. Are we on the brink of a civil war here?
Well, maybe not a civil war, but there are more and more attempts by many army officers to send strong messages to the regime that they are ready now to defend the population and not anymore remain silent or neutral when they see the death squads of the Syrian regime killing tens of people each Friday in most demonstrations. But the political leadership of the Syrian uprising and most of the committees working through the demonstrations, the slogans, the political literature that is being used is still very much concentrating on the idea that this revolution should win ethically and politically through its peaceful aspect. So the militarization of the uprising is not in its interest for the time being now. But it's also difficult to keep, to maintain this peaceful aspect when tens of thousands of demonstrators are being just sometimes not only a violent crackdown or 14 or 15 people killed in the street, but many of them are suffering in the jails. Wounded people cannot go to hospitals because they might be assassinated there. So the situation is extremely tough and getting more and more dangerous.
Okay, Ziad Majed, thank you very much for your analysis. Now, 10 months on from the revolt that toppled Hosni Mubarak, tens of thousands of Egyptians have gathered once again in Cairo's Tahrir Square this Friday, a mass rally aimed at pushing Egypt's ruling military to cede power unconditionally as parliamentary elections draw near. And there could be cause for concern there. Protesters are worried about a government proposal that aims to shield the military's budget from public scrutiny. Preferential treatment that harks back to an era Egyptians thought they'd seen the end of. Well, the powerful Muslim Brotherhood is heading this protest. It's also tipped to dominate the elections in 10 days.
Almost 10 months after demonstrations in Tahrir Square led to the toppling of Hosni Mubarak's presidency, it is again the site of widespread anger. The Muslim Brotherhood and its Freedom and Justice Party led the call to protest after the provisional government floated a document declaring the military the guardian of constitutional legitimacy, suggesting the military would have the final word on legislation. Other Islamist groups, liberal parties and pro-democracy movements joined the demonstrations and called for the ruling Supreme Council of the Armed Forces to transfer power to a civilian government as soon as possible.